Okay, so Rajendra, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us. And we hope today that we're really going to be able to help you all. Well, we're going to learn a huge amount from Rajendra, who has been practicing medicine for many, many years and has a wealth of knowledge. And I'm going to hopefully ask some intelligent questions, which will enable him to reveal all that knowledge and help all of you today. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. The theme for today is, of course, supercharging the immune system, and really during these times of need where it's really helpful for us to be able to, well, help ourselves as much as possible. And I hope Rajendra is going to be able to help us do that. So Rajendra, is there anything particular that you'd like to kick off with for today in terms of where we begin our discussion in terms of supercharging our immunity?
Yes, why not? We're going to start with a disclaimer. I'm going to be talking today about immunity, and I'm going to try and focus that attention onto how we can boost our anti-infection immunity against viruses. So this is pretty much a discussion on what we know about what the body does to attack viruses. Under no circumstances is anybody to assume that what I'm saying is directly related to the coronavirus and COVID. So there's the disclaimer. The real trouble with the virus is that it's new, so we're not absolutely sure how it's going to behave. This means that although we've got a lot of knowledge about viruses, we have a few drugs that will kill them. Mostly they're not on sale to the public. They're not often prescribed by GPs. They are dealt with by specialists. So these are obviously not large in number, and they're not all that effective all the time. So our understanding of viruses is great. Our ability to fight them is not so great. So we're really very dependent upon our immune system. And if our immune system is working well, there are lots and lots of studies that show how nutrition, healthy lifestyle, hygiene, sleep, de-stressing influence the chemicals that are made by the white blood cells to stimulate them against viruses. So I'm going to talk very broadly, and then there'll be some specific comments on what we do know about the virus, the coronavirus. And I'm very happy to answer questions that are directed towards me. They may not make up the body of my conversation, so please feel free to ask questions. So firstly, NHS site. You've got to look at the NHS site. Whatever else I suggest or whatever else is going on, you need to keep abreast of the rules that are being laid down. At this point, if I or any other doctors seems to suggest that we should be doing this for that, or take this to boost your immunity, you must not assume it overrides the rules that are being laid down. So currently, self-isolation, very important. It doesn't matter how long you've been self-isolated, unfortunately, because you're getting some contact. So until we are told the rules about the length of time that we need to be locked away, in effect, you've got to stick with it. So have a good look at the NHS site. On my website, I've got a slideshow as part of a webinar that I did last week. By all means, please have a good look at that, because on it is a set of slides with other links. So it's links to interesting sites that will give you a broader look, not only at the medical aspect of this, but also at the sociological and economic aspects of this, because so many of us are very worried about what is actually going to happen and how is the world going to be when we come out the other side. And I'm going to just put that in at the beginning. We'll touch upon why later, but really it's to do with the stress levels that we're all feeling as our lives have all of us, our lives have changed. So do please keep a very close eye on that. I would say that avoiding speculation is a very good idea. The NHS site will give you the rules. They are not buttering it up. It is as it is, and we have to face that it is as it is. Don't try and get overly frightened by banner headlines talking about a war and killer viruses and so on. try and stick to the facts, not the rhetoric. I think that's extremely important. There isn't much in the way of treatment, as I said, for viruses. We're going to take quite a while to get our vaccine up and running. Vaccines have a great effect on a lot of diseases. If we could spread them a bit more, they may be beneficial more worldwide. Some people don't get on with them. And the question that I had last week that I'm going to preempt is, am I pro or against vaccines? I sit very much on the fence. I think we have a failing in medicine because we have to have this failing on being able to look at people as individuals. And therefore we have to give advice based on the masses. For the masses, the concept of vaccination is perfectly good, very sensible. For the majority of people, most people don't have any problems with the vaccine. Many people, particularly those who would come and see me or who are interested in non-conventional medicine, vaccination is an anathema, and it's not necessarily right for a particular individual. And there will be stories out there to match that. But do not underestimate the benefits that vaccinations can give. But a vaccination at the end of the day is trying to mimic what the body does, which is natural immunity. And that's what we're going to focus on particularly today. Excuse my dipping down because I've got a lot to say and I want to try and make sure I don't miss anything out. So I've got little crib sheets down here. I think what I'd like to do is start off with a phrase that I've coined called life medicine, or medicine for life, I suppose, but I've come up with lifestyle medicine, I think it was in the end. Now, what we're talking about here is what we need to be doing to keep ourselves at our immune optimum best. I will go into more of the specifics about viruses in general, but there are some basics, regardless of what the infection might be. And to do that, I'm going to do it chronologically. So I'm going to start with sleep. We go to bed and we go to sleep. It's so important and quite interesting how many people underestimate sleep, and why would we? We can often get by on 4 hours sleep and we think, great, I'm up and running. Particularly it happens if you've got a fun and exciting life. It's not quite the same if you don't. But it is important to get some sleep. Our nervous system is packed full of mitochondria. Mitochondria are the small parts of cells that take 1 molecule of oxygen, 1 molecule of sugar, and convert it into 36 units of energy. And the nerves have about 5,000 or 6,000 mitochondria per nerve cell. The heart matches that because, of course, it's beating consistently 72 beats per minute for a lifetime, billions of beats. So it needs a lot of energy. Other muscles that we use a lot, let's say our back muscles when we're sitting up or walking, doing anything, frankly, other than lying down, most muscles have around 800 to 1200 mitochondria. So sleeping is necessary because we have to rest the mitochondria in the nervous system. Fortunately, the heart will slow down overnight, and that seems to be enough rest for the heart muscles. But if you don't sleep, the heart will beat a little bit more frequently, the nerves will be much more active. And the brain can't keep going if the mitochondria aren't producing the energy, and that is indeed what tiredness is. But very importantly, if the mitochondria are subfunctional and the nervous system is subfunctional, your immune system will be subfunctional. The nerves produce chemicals that tell the immune system how to work, and if they aren't being produced at the right level because we're too tired, our immune system won't work. That phrase about an hour or two before midnight being more important than afterwards is probably accurate to a degree. Everybody has a circadian rhythm. Youngsters tend to stay up later, go to bed, wake up later, go to bed later. There's an evolutionary reason behind that that's quite interesting. Very quickly, we needed our youngsters, our young warriors, to be awake when the predators came out at sunset. So it was wiser, and genetically, evolutionarily, survival of the fittest led us to having younger people stay awake longer. As we get older, that clock goes back a bit. So we need to get to sleep when we start to get tired. Don't try and beat that. Don't go to bed and start watching television. Television is a very non-activating, very activating activity. So we sit there not really having to work at it, and we can just get locked in and watch something for 2-3 hours.
So
Try
Rajendra,
doing the same. Sorry,
that's what you're mentioning right now is a really crucial point, because there's you're explaining to us that sleep is critical, yeah, really ultimately for immunity, if I'm not mistaken, to
correct.
get enough sleep. And I think what you're touching on is really key. And I know certainly historically I might not have appreciated this so much, and I really wanted to just kind of interject there, because the number one, with the advent of artificial lighting, I think what a lot of us are doing is overriding that initial sleep instinct, and we're staying up and we're on our phone, we're on our tablet, we're on our devices, we're connected, we're watching TV late into the evening, early morning. And of course all of that, I think a lot of the blue light and a lot of that extra artificial light starts to, as you said quite rightly, activate the nervous system, but also starts to disrupt the circadian rhythm, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely right. And here you in your lovely blue jumper and me with a blue tie. So we want people to be sparked up. And indeed, the sky is blue. We have evolved to accept that blue means be awake. And we need to make sure we override that. So trying to get to sleep when the sun goes down and waking up when the sun comes up is ideal. Doesn't fit in with most modern living, but try and get yourself to sleep. Getting up in the morning, don't assume that you should just leap out of bed. You might be able to do that when you're younger, but it's certainly not something that any animal does. You watch any animal waking up and you will see it stretch. Watch children, babies, when they wake up, they stretch. They are exercising the muscles swiftly. They are getting blood flow into the area. Many of us get up, we pad our way down to make a cup of tea or coffee, and we come back to bed and we sit there and we might watch TV or read a newspaper whilst we wake up. Good, fair enough, but make sure either before or after you do some stretching. Get the blood flow going. The immune system is dependent upon our getting the blood to an area that's infected, and we've got to make sure that we are opening up those blood vessels. Deep breathing exercises are very essential, particularly with viral infections that go down to the lungs. Coronavirus, incidentally, tends to be a problem when it hits the lungs. It doesn't for many, but it will for some. And for those that it does, it seems to be a very aggressive virus for the lungs.
Rajendra,
if you've been breathing well, you're going to have opened up the lungs.
Can I ask you a question, again, related to what you're talking about in terms of the exercise? Now, you've talked about deep breathing, and certainly I understand that yoga and gentle exercise can be really beneficial in boosting the cardiovascular system, sending more blood oxygen and nutrients throughout the system. But also my understanding is that if the exercise, again, my understanding is can help activate the immune system and help deliver the white blood cells and the antibodies, to help improve circulation, deliver those throughout the body to help combat, any infection in the body. But also, and if you could maybe explain this a little bit more, I understood that actually, if you do exercise that's too intense, you can, if you're doing high intensity exercise, to all intents and purposes, that can potentially compromise the immunity. I mean, is that right?
Yes, it's a huge subject. I'm going to plug my book. There's an entire chapter on the benefits of exercise, and therefore I feel I can comment a little bit on it because I did quite a lot of work on the subject. I was surprised to find that between sleep and exercise, there were more studies on most conditions combining those two events than there were on any other factor, including medicines. So there seems to be a lot of evidence that exercise will help any condition, and the immune system being boosted by it is extremely relevant. Adrenaline comes up when we're anxious. It comes up if we are under stress, both physical or psychological. If we exercise, we reduce some of that adrenaline, we use it up. We also release endorphins and enkephalins, which are the body's natural opiates. By bringing down your adrenaline levels, you also rebalance your cortisol levels. Your cortisol is a steroid. It is both anabolic, builds us up, and catabolic, breaks us down. People who work too hard will build up their adrenaline levels, which will be compensated for by cortisol. We go on holiday, the adrenaline levels drop, but the cortisol levels come down more slowly. And cortisol, with its catabolic effect, slows down the immune system. So how many of us have actually found, I feel great, working hard, looking forward to my holiday, and then the first 3 days of my holiday, I feel lousy, I catch a cold.
Absolutely.
So typical of airline flights, and we blame the aircraft, but it's often to do with our own immunity taking a dip.
And
so
let me ask you a question.
Has to be balanced.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt. Now, again, if I'm not mistaken, this dynamic of effectively, we're talking about, we're starting to get into the realms of stress, and I think one of certainly in my experience has been that certainly we've seen with a lot of our clients that, the body becomes stressed. So some of the things we're touching on here, the TV, the constant connection to our devices, and also maybe with the artificial lighting overriding that instinct to go to sleep, staying up late, constantly on alert for, texts and messages and social media, going to bed later and later. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, this is all contributing actually to almost unrelenting stress, and the body seems to get locked into overactive, again, nervous activity. The sympathetic nervous system, I think, is kicked in, and again, it seems to me that the body doesn't reset. It gets locked into overactive nervous activity, sympathetic activity. And what you're talking about, going on holiday, and then of course you're in a nice relaxed environment, but actually the body is still in that heightened state of stress and awareness. And I mean,
let's travel down that path. You're absolutely right. The nervous system is remarkably adaptable. I think we're seeing that now. For most of us, if we had been told on day one of this pandemic that we were going into lockdown and we weren't going to be allowed out of our houses except for a brief walk for a month, you can see and imagine the rise in panic. How am I going to deal with this? Very sensibly, the authorities broke it to us day by day and said, oh, it's okay, you need to be careful. And then they closed the shops, then they closed the pubs, and they did it stepwise so that we actually adapted. And this is a very typical event for the nervous system. We can adapt. And we can adapt quickly. If you take a prince out of a castle, throw him in the gutter and say you've lost everything, he will be shocked, but he will recover and he will learn how to chop wood, make a fire, and forage for food. So the human being is remarkably adaptable. We have certainly created a lifestyle here where everything is fast and active, and the brain has adapted to it. One of the positive things I think that's coming out of these last 2-3 weeks, and will probably go on for the next 2-3 weeks, is that you sit there wondering what to do. I was very lost without my Saturday football and rugby, and I think, what am I going to do? And I found so many things to do, and it was fun. And I'm now actually quite grateful that I'm not spending 2 hours sitting on a couch watching a rugby match or heading off to a football game. It's become more of a treat. So there's going to be a lot of positives out of this, but this is just my output on the stress levels. If you keep your adrenaline levels reduced, and when I say adrenaline, yes, sympathetic nervous system, it gets a bit more technical if we start talking about catecholamines. There are lots of stress chemicals. But if we can keep those reduced, the nervous system will function better. And if it does, the immune system will function better.
So bottom line, the bottom line is then that actually what we are describing here is that the lifestyle actually is inducing stress, and actually unrelenting stress, that potentially for the majority of us, if I'm not mistaken, is compromising the immune system.
Yes, full stop. But I'm not sure that that's a big surprise to all of us or any of us, is it? We've got a lifestyle that gets us out of bed. Many of us go off to jobs that on days we would rather we weren't doing. We would like to have a little bit more freedom and flexibility in time. Well, this is going to be an interesting outcome again, looking at the positive side of all of this. I wonder how many of us are going to be told, actually, we found that the businesses worked quite well with you working from home. We were already moving that way. That, of course, puts us in front of a screen, but frankly, we're in front of a screen at work. So, yes, screen time, there's been quite a marked uptake, or at least recognition of mental health issues, particularly in our young, and that does coincide with screen time. The science and the research behind this is not great. A lot of the money that needs to be found is going to disrupt corporations and corporate profits. So we're not exactly going to see a lot of studies, but you've got to look at what's out there, as I do. I sit on the fence. I'm a conventional doctor. I've got an interest in non-conventional medicine. Most of the people in the non-conventional side, on the scientific side of it, are questioning the exposure of our brain to the constant blue light from a screen and the persistence. It's very hard also, just on a psychological point of view, to get away and be with yourself, let alone be with your God or your spiritual side or your universe. You go to bed being insulted by somebody on the phone. You go to bed having read something you disagree with, which you then take into your sleep state. You wake up to find out what more has been said. You wake up several times through the night, most of us do. We may or may not recognize it. I wonder if the brain switches into that, which leads us on to the practicalities of what we need to do. I think that those of us who've got some sort of training in meditation and find it easy and enjoyable, great. I'm not a great meditator. I find it very hard to switch off. So I find that something that is forcing me to breathe in a particular way, forcing me to concentrate on patterns and movements, very useful. So I'm much more of a Qigong and yoga type person. I should and will perhaps use this opportunity to go back to my rudimentaries of Tai Chi. But any sort of exercise, you lock into a running style, a speed, a walking style. 20 to 30 minutes of brisk walking has got, for many of us, due to our genetics, as good a cardiovascular benefit as heading off and doing an hour on a cycle or running. We now are able to measure, incidentally, different gene types to tell us what sort of exercise we should be doing. This isn't easily available and it's quite expensive, but you probably know it from yourself, what works for you.
I think, one of the things that we've been, we have a training for clients to help them with the meditation, the breathing and the calmness, and to actually, help them with their mindset during their periods of being at home and unwell, or being even, housebound or bedbound. It has a huge psychological impact. And I think the beauty of today, which was a little bit of a surprise for me, and I'm really happy that it's kind of gone this way, is that, we're talking about lifestyle here. And you said quite rightly, the lifestyle today, we know it's all super stressful. But what we're maybe not appreciating, and I'm hoping that what is coming out of this initial talk that we're having today, is that the reality is that our lifestyle, the stress, the devices, the watching TV, the way that we're living is really compromising our immunity and resulting in really a significant increase in susceptibility, number one, to illness and disease and potentially infections. And we're doing this on a daily basis.
Indeed. On that list of links that I've got on my website, on the paper the slides that I prepared for the webinar, and I think you may have them as well, so they can come to your site and see it as well. You'll find a paper which I'm just going to look down and read out to you. It's called Lifestyle Medicine, a brief review of its dramatic impact on health and survival. It's by Bodai and et al., for the scientists listening in today. It was published in 2018. This isn't something that comes from when we didn't have choices. And in that paper, it discusses much of what we're talking about and gives some guidelines and the science behind why it is necessary to rest, relax, exercise.
So you know what, what I love, what is for me, what's incredible about this is I've got a long list of things here that we discussed lots. There's a huge list of things that we can discuss. And interestingly enough, we were talking about supercharging the immune system. And for me, what is really quite mind-blowing is that actually the first two things that didn't come to mind for me as being really majorly important and significant, sleep, and of course we know stress is a factor, but those two things, sleep and stress, which we can do a lot to manage those and work with those, and again, you tell me, if we can really get a handle on the sleep and the stress, what do you think, again, in terms of supercharging and boosting the immunity to help the body be able to combat all of these things? How significant is that?
Well, let's move on in a moment to the nutritional factors, because, well, let's bring it all together now. What we know from studies is we know how to stimulate the white blood cells and how the body stimulates the white blood cells. There are particular proteins called cytokines and a subsection of those called interleukins. There are many of them, and they're basically numbered: interleukin 2, interleukin 16. And there are a huge range of cytokines. There are other hormones. Well, they're not really hormones, they're chemicals. They're chemicals that come out from white blood cells that influence other white blood cells. And there's an array of them. And we know not only do they stimulate the immune system, we know which parts of the immune system they stimulate. We know that the basic principles of immunity start with a barrier. The barrier of our skin, the barrier of our membranes in our mouths, sinuses, lungs, and particularly in the gut, where we are potentially fighting 30 to 100 trillion bacteria, 10 times that number of viruses, all trying to get out of the gut into the body. Yep. And our immune system is lining the gut, it's lining the membranes. It is producing antibodies called immunoglobulins in the sebum on our skin, that lovely greasy stuff that if we have too much of is a nuisance, but if we don't have, we dry up. Sebum contains secretory IgA, the first line of antibody response. The sweat contains it, our saliva, our tears, everywhere. We've got secretory IgA. In the gut, masses of the stuff are produced in the large amount of mucus that we produce in the gut to stop things getting in. If you don't maintain your barriers, and that includes the bowel bacteria that stick onto a healthy gut and act as a secondary barrier, then you become dependent on your secondary immunity. The secondary immunity has white blood cells that are looking out for something that isn't us. Right. And these are capable then of producing these chemicals that go and tell the third line, in effect, it's really part two of the second line, which are the T cells, to start producing antibodies. Right. To start reacting to the antibodies that are being produced. So we have a whole array of defense mechanism in place, but it is remarkably dependent on not being blocked by stress chemicals, right, and being supported by our nutrition. So we know that when we start eating well, we take in a variety of nutrients, from vitamins through minerals and coenzymes, cofactors. And these all stimulate the white blood cells or maintain the health of the barrier. Yeah. Scurvy is well known. It's a lack of vitamin C. And one of the first signs of scurvy is your skin starts to crack and it dries up. Without vitamin E, our skin will dry up. So maintaining good nutrition is extremely important. Now, most of us don't pay attention to that for most of our lives.
Rajendra, I have to ask you, you made a really, really critical point, which I think again, for many of us, we don't necessarily consider this. You reference really the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first primary line of defense being really the gut and the friendly flora in
Part of the first, yes.
yeah, a part of it. So how important is it to maintain, really a healthy functional gut with lots of, hopefully friendly flora as a part of our immune system, our immune package?
I talked about exercise and stress being something that has been shown up to affect nearly every condition in scientific papers. If I was asked, what one thing would you take if you were to take one supplement to your desert island, it would be a multi-strained probiotic. Okay. Multi-strained doesn't mean there's 50 billion of the critters in there. It means that we've got 6, 12, 25, one of the biggest products I use, 31 different bacterial strains.
Right.
We've got currently around 2,500 to 3,500 different bacteria in our gut.
Yeah.
They have analyzed the gut from the Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. No idea how they've done it, but they have suggested that we used to have 10 times that many when we were eating Stone Age diets.
Yeah.
So the bowel flora has a very, very long-standing and important part to play in our evolution. And we know that the chemicals that are produced by the bacteria go into the bloodstream and stimulate the white blood cells. If your bowel bacteria become imbalanced and you lose your beneficial bacteria, you don't get the cytokines being produced by them that stimulate our white cells to produce their cytokines to stimulate the white blood cells. So also, above all else, probiotics.
Another thing that again strikes me is that traditionally, certainly in Eastern Europe and in some of the other cultures, there was really a tradition of eating fermented foods, live cultured foods, that we would be regularly introducing in our diet and with our food. We would, friendly flora. There would be constant ingestion of these, well, hopefully good bacteria that would help again bolster the body's natural defenses. How important or how helpful could it be, again, working with natural fermented live cultured foods? Is that something for people to worth considering? That is worth
asked and answered, Mark. Asked and answered. You're quite right. We didn't have supplemental probiotics. We had them from our sauerkraut and from our yogurt, from our fermented soy. Many different foods are effectively fermented, or they are used by bacteria to create a fermented environment. Most of this is quite simple because it's vegetables. We do really well with lots of vegetables. We do well with fermenting vegetables or fermented vegetables because it adds in the bacteria. We've evolved with these, and therefore our bowel flora have assumed that these are normal. Where they were abnormal, they would have killed us. So the genes wouldn't have survived. So we are here today because of our interrelationship with the bacteria that we've eaten and the foods that have fed those bacteria that now colonize us.
Right.
An interesting factor is with elective cesarean deliveries. When you colonize, the way we colonize our gut, it doesn't sound all that savory, but it's through the traveling down through our mother's vaginal vault. And we inhale and we start our lives by taking in a mouthful of bacteria that are of use to the human being. And because they are your mums, and you will then get hugged by your dads and your siblings, you're going to get their bacteria as well. And your in uterine sterile gut becomes colonized by human healthy bacteria. We now know that if you have a sterilized bowel, so more sterile bowel, you don't live at all. If you're the product of an elective cesarean, you don't get introduced to those bugs in the same quantity immediately. and we've got higher levels of allergic response, and allergy is the immune system getting it wrong, is because we don't have a good bowel flora. So the connections from pediatrics, allergy, through immunity, to heart disease, to cancer, and the association with bowel flora is astonishing.
Okay. One of the things that, again, I'm really quite passionate about is, you know, it's been said that we are the indoor generation. We are living indoors 90% of the time. And, you know, I like to explain that we are light deficient. You know, today, the modern society, we are deficient in light. Now, I wanted to ask your view on this. You know, I know we know that daylight is essential, particularly, you know, for vitamin D production. Now, in the context of, you know, what we're discussing today, immunity and supercharging the immune system, how important, is vitamin D for the immune system?
Okay, well, let's take sunlight and 3 different areas of sunlight. The first one, vitamin D. Without sunlight, our skin won't convert the chemical that we have in it into active vitamin D. Mm-hmm. So the fear that we have of the sun now because of melanoma and skin cancer, which is warranted, is perhaps tipped the scale a bit too far. And we may be seeing a rise in certain conditions. Asthma is a big one, because asthma and vitamin D are quite closely linked.
Okay.
We may also have learning difficulties if we don't have vitamin D early in our development. Vitamin D, frankly, is another of those things that seems to affect so many different areas. Vitamin D and diabetes, childhood diabetes. One study has shown that we would have 33% less childhood diabetes if we had enforced vitamin D supplementation in our children. When I say shows it, suggests it. So cannot emphasize the importance of vitamin D and sunshine. The way to balance the amount of sunshine you have is to learn your own skin type, and your skin type will change as we age. It'll also change based on how much fat you have under the skin. No surprise, if you heat fat, it gets hot, it remains hotter, therefore the skin and the nerves don't handle it so well, and you'll sunburn more readily the more fat you have under the skin. Another reason for obesity to be taken very seriously indeed. But if we keep ourselves in the sun between, let's say, 10 and 12 on a July day, and we find that we have become a little bit pink, that's not a good thing for you to do. Only stay out for an hour, perhaps between 9 and 10. If you happen to have my mixed race skin coloration, I might do a bit better. But even
is that going to be enough? You know, so if someone goes out from 9 to 10 for an hour in that earlier morning sunshine, is that going to be sufficient for them to get the vitamin D production that they need, or will they have to go out again at another time?
Well, it's based on skin type, Mark. You see, if you take a Scandinavian and put them on the African plain, they aren't going to do very well. The skin hasn't got the defense mechanism, and the amount of vitamin D that they will make because they have less melanin blocking the sunlight is going to be enormous. You take the black skin and you put it into the northern hemisphere, and you don't get the vitamin D production. So the darker the skin, the longer you have to be in the sunlight. But the darker the skin, the longer you're able to be in the sunlight. So we all have to learn what our level is, and you learn your level by watching your skin, pushing down, and recognizing that pinkness that blanches, and you get a white patch, and that white patch does not recolor for a while. That is early sunburn. So you can't say that 2 hours is a good idea, 8 hours is a good idea. It depends what your skin type is and where you need to be. What you mustn't do, I think, is coat yourself in suntan cream, factor 30, and then stay there thinking, I'm safe, because you are blocking the vitamin D conversion. The use of sun cream is essential if you're going to stay out beyond your skin type's tolerance.
Right.
So
So
we've got to learn that.
sorry, go ahead.
And not everyone will learn it easily, but we know what sunburn is, and it's not fun. So I would encourage everybody to try and learn their skin type. Second part of sunlight. Sunlight goes in through the eyes, and it affects the pineal gland in particular. Pineal gland is a small gland that is in part a controlling gland of other things. It's what produces melanin, which puts us to sleep. So the less sunlight we have, the more melanin the pineal gland will make. But the sunlight going in through the eyes affects the brain in many other ways. It's an activator, and it is a regenerator. Photons of light are known to be of benefit, and this is an area of your expertise, of course, because we're talking about many different wavelengths with many different benefits. But heat is of use to the immunity. We get a fever when we spark up an attack on an infection. These are cytokines again that are telling the white blood cells to act more quickly, make more cytokines and interleukins to tell other white cells to attack something. So fever is a friend is a very important truism. So therefore, the heat of the sun will make a difference. The heat of the sun will send in photons. Photons of energy are very relevant, which is the third part of sunlight, because we actually make sunlight. Our mitochondria, these small parts of cells, take one molecule of oxygen, one molecule of sugar, make 36 units of energy. They are emitting photons. They are emitting light. So if we consider that our own bodies have evolved in conjunction with these small particles called mitochondria, and they are using photons as part of cell maintenance, we can understand again why the sun is important.
So that, I mean, that I have to thank you for that, because of course, you know, that that's really what we are doing with the far infrared light therapy. And you know, we work with people where inevitably the body is not working, and your explanation actually is amazing, because it really helps everybody understand, have a greater understanding of why, when you send photons in the form of far infrared into the cells of the body literally can take that. It's like putting your body on a charger, on a phone charger. The body just literally takes that energy and will utilize it for whatever processes it needs. And of course, as we know, with the lockdown, you know, you might be able to walk outside a little bit, but you're not getting a lot of sunlight or daylight. And being able to, you know, really send light into the body, and more importantly, heat the body and induce effectively an artificial fever, we're able to help the body, you know, stimulate its own production, you know, of cytokines, interleukins, and of course antibodies and lymphocytes and white blood cells. And actually, again, something that I hadn't appreciated was that, you know, sedentary lifestyle, not moving, you know, the impact of that, the impact of poor circulation means that we're not circulating, you know, the defenses literally through the body to the sites of potentially infection. And again, something that I hadn't considered previously was the benefit of heating the body with far infrared, improving, boosting circulation, you know, with the treatment. And the result of the improved circulation was facilitating delivery of all the body's basically defense systems to the various sites throughout the whole body. And you know, we know far infrared is a delivery system for medications or supplementations, but it had never occurred to me until recently that we're actually helping the body deliver its own natural defenses. That was really quite new for me.
Yeah, very, very important. I think if we just recognizing the time now and a couple of important points to cover, I think that if we can recognize that exercise and the application of heat in any form, and for those who are anyway at risk, for those who are particularly concerned about their age, for those who are concerned about their current tendency, perhaps because of stress or otherwise, to go down with infections too easily, and you can't plug yourself, but I can. I think that the use of far infrared and far infrared equipment is really a benefit. So let's give a big tick in the box for heat. I would like to just comment, if I may, I'm just sorry. I don't mean to be taking over, but I'm aware of the time, and I'd like to allow people to ask specific questions. But there are two areas that I would like to just one to tie up and one to comment on. The additional compounds. We've talked about vitamin D. Talked about probiotics. Vitamin C. There are studies going on around the world of different levels of vitamin C, and the preliminary findings are suggestive that it's useful against COVID. As I said, I'm not going to comment on COVID specifically, and I'm going to repeat that. The preliminary suggestions are, when we look at the studies of vitamin C on antiviral effect and protection of the body, you would get the impression, because GPs generally would not say, yeah, vitamin C is good, it stops cold. That's true. Often, though, the studies that have been done are not using enough vitamin C, they're not using it for long enough, and they're not taking it persistently enough. So if you take a small amount of vitamin C for 1 week through a cold, you may not see much difference. But if you are good at taking in vitamin C, and then you really up it, and I wouldn't say that I would give a figure, but certainly be considering 6 to 12 grams a day as a perfectly acceptable anti-infective dosage. There seems to be evidence that that is of benefit. My colleagues in my field tend to use the principle of bowel tolerance. And we again learn what our bowel tolerance is. If you find that you can take 1 gram of vitamin C 3 times a day and you don't end up with loose stool, go up to 2 grams 3 times a day. Some people can get up to 20 grams before they start to get loose stool. And that may be a level useful if you feel yourself unwell.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, now I know there's different forms of Vit C. You know, you can take ascorbic acid, there's you know, non-acidic forms of Vit C. Is the esterified or the non-acidic type of vitamin C as effective as ascorbic acid? Is there any difference in efficacy between the different forms of Vit C available?
Let me use a pen here as an example for my theory based on facts that I feel I have read. So I don't expect everyone to necessarily accept this nor ask me for specifics. I think ascorbic acid is made from sorbitol, a sugar, and it is made in hundreds of thousands of tons a year, interestingly in China. It's distributed around the world, and a lot of vitamin C that you find on the shelves is entirely manufactured, and it looks like that. That is ascorbic acid. Okay. Ascorbic acid tends to be a white crystalline powder, but the white crystalline powder is very rarely found in nature unless you start processing. Okay. Vitamin C actually comes along looking like this. It's got lots of things attached with it, minimally 8 that I know of. Yeah. The receptors in the body have, the receptors for our vitamin C have 8 locks. Okay. If you put ascorbic acid in, you can block natural vitamin C getting in. Oh, interesting. What these other bits do have not been really mapped out. Yeah. So often with vitamin C, often with alpha tocopherol, one of the major components of vitamin A, using one particular type of a carotene, which is vitamin A, you do that and you block the others getting in. So you'll find studies that suggest, particularly in cancer, that if you take vitamin A or vitamin E, you may actually increase the speed with which that cancer grows. But in reality, I think it is more likely to be due to the fact that you've taken an artificial form. Now, in answer to your question, therefore, if you can find ascorbic acid attached to something, magnesium ascorbate, for example, the magnesium ascorbate has been shown to be effective at cellular level at a minimally a 3 times greater level than vitamin C by itself. Yeah. It may well be that natural vitamin C from an orange will work even better. Yeah. There are studies that suggest that you can take much lower doses of vitamin C foods to get the same in laboratory effects that you get from an artificial unitary ascorbic acid. So eating is the best thing that you can do. Eating good food is the best thing you can do. supplementing at a time of wanting to upregulate your immune system, the basis of this talk, the relevancy is to take as natural a format as you can, or find a compound that is attached or comes with other things, and also eat it, take it generally with food, because you'll have the other bits that are necessary that might well join up with the vitamin C or the vitamin E and activate the receptor more adequately. So, touched upon vitamin C. Good idea to be taking one of those broad, as natural as possible multi-nutrients. And we then move on to some specifics, if we may. Medicinal mushrooms have got a huge amount of science based in Chinese literature, and that's not translated into English, so it's not well publicized in the West, where English remains the main language of medical papers. But beta-glucans is well studied in the English language, in medical science, and beta-glucans stimulate certain interleukins and cytokines. So we know why medicinal mushrooms work. So at a time when we want to up our immunity, we could start taking a small amount of beta-glucans. Don't do it for too long, because we do know that people who use echinacea at highish dose, again, in part active because of beta-glucans, the white cells lower their reactivity to it. So much like a white noise, you get used to it. White cells will get used to having a beta-glucan stimulant. They will slow down when they realize there actually isn't any infection around. But just sparking up with a low dose of beta-glucans at a time when you feel that you might be confronted by infection, and then at the point where you do feel a cough coming on, or you're starting to get sniffly, wallop the dose up. Follow what's on the labels, don't go above that unless you get advice from a nutritionist, a medical herbalist, or an integrated doctor, who will of course be able to guide you for higher doses.
Okay.
So that little list, probiotics, multi-nutrients, particularly with antioxidants, there's one, these group of attachments of bioflavonoids, they come along with most natural active vitamins. Minerals, very important, get those combined in multi-nutrients. Take your vitamin D, take your vitamin C. Do that now at a lowish level. Again, the slides that you've got and are available on my website will explain that.
Okay. What I'd like to do is, we started a little bit late. So number one, I'm going to say we will run a little bit longer, number one. And I'd like to invite everybody, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. And as I said, we're going to run a little bit longer. Please do wait till the end. We Get Fit, myself, I have a very special offer where we have been running a special mindset training course, helping people to remain calm, learning breath regulation, breath techniques, to help you, should we say, overcome some of the stresses that you may be going through. We're launching a 30-day program, which is going to be absolutely free for all of you who have attended, and actually for all of our clients. So we're going to offer a 30-day special program of training. It's called Think Fit, and it's to help you, again, really to provide you with the simplest, easiest tools to learn to manage your mind, your thinking, and your calmness. My background, very briefly, is I spent many years living with a meditation teacher, over 7 years living monastic life effectively, and there was 8 or 9 years prior to that where I was traveling and basically spending a lot of time with monks, yogis, shamans, laymen, shaman and lamas and things. And shamans. It's time for me to really share some of the techniques which are, based on ancient teachings, ancient yogic traditions. They're not really particularly well known in the West. It's time for me to share that. I believe that's why I was given that knowledge. So please do hang on to the end if you want to participate in that. Again, completely free, and we're launching that for all of you and the rest of our clients that are not currently doing that with us. Any questions you have, please pop them in the chat box so Dr. Sharma can take a look at those. Rajendra, please forgive me for interrupting. If you want to, again, just summarize anything else that you think might be helpful for everybody.
I think we've covered the main aspects that I wanted to at least touch upon, from the point of view of doing what you can to reduce your stress, increase your sleep, make sure you're eating as well as you know you can. Take these basic supplements at a time when your body is not only stressed by your own life, it's stressed by the fears of what's going on and the uncertainty. As I was talking about the prince thrown into the gutter, they're very likely to get up, find the firewood, find the food, and get on with a different life. Tell the prince that he's being thrown out of his castle 3 months before he is, and he's going to have a very unpleasant 3 months. I'm getting some feedback here. Are you hearing me clearly enough, Mark?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. I can hear you well. No problems.
All righty. So the point that I wanted to just spend a few minutes on is the current front page of the Times today, the news chatter that's going on about testing. And I want to be clear here that this is my personal commentary and my view. I don't think that it's contradicting the conventional view. It is how I see things. At the moment, parts of the world have undergone a considerable amount of testing, whether that is PCR for the presence of the virus. Those are the pictures of people being swabbed in their cars as they drive through by a fully coated and covered health worker. That test has got flaws in it, because you may have the virus that may not be there at the back of your throat at the time that you are swabbed. Without symptoms, it may not be there anyway. There are also tests for antibodies. Antibodies come in many different types. These white cell immunoglobulins made by the white cells. There is one called IgM that comes up within about 5 to 7 days, or perhaps a bit longer, of getting infected. And that's followed shortly later by the IgGs. The IgGs are much more in number. They are a very concentrated and concerted attack by the immune system. The IgMs tend to disappear and the IgGs stay in place. And the IgGs are responsible for longer term immunity. Now, the tests that are out there for most viruses look for IgM and IgG. IgM, am I currently very active against this infection? And IgG, I may be active, but I've had it a while, and now I've got my fullest attack force on. We don't know with all viruses, and we certainly don't know with the COVID virus, whether having IgM and IgG are going to make you safe. But if we compare it to what we do know about viruses and immunity, the chances are that with a raised IgM and a raised IgG, you are fighting or have fought and you are showing some level of immunity. Having immunity does not mean you are not spreading the virus. It means that the virus is less likely to live in you for long, but it doesn't mean that it won't live on you for a short time. Just enough time to think that you're safe and pop out to see Granny. Not at all. These tests must not be taken separately from the advice that the government are giving us. We must stay isolated, locked down, and behaving ourselves regardless of the tests that come forward. The tests that are available are not abundant, but we are advised by our health secretary today that there's going to be 100,000 tests done daily by the end of the month. Okay, how public health will govern the results of that, we don't know yet, and we'll have to watch and see. But we should do so with interest and with little prayer signs up there, because we need to know who is infected, we need to know who is immune, we need to get an idea of whether at the moment, we've only got 10% of the population with some level of immunity, or 90%. We need to understand of those people who've got symptoms, what their percentage of immunity is. Once we've correlated this, we're going to understand how best to protect those who are elderly, those who are ill, and those who are at risk. So getting the tests done are extremely important, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There are experts, and I'm certainly not one of them, who are saying we don't need to test everyone, we need to test health workers. And we need to do that rapidly. And I could not agree more. You want your health workers to be shown to have some level of immunity. And we need to cross fingers that what level of immunity is shown is active. Because at the moment, what we're doing is that we don't know who's protected or partially protected. We wait for a cough to show up, and they're sent home for 14 days, which means that we've got the lack of support staff that we need in our NHS. So we need to get these tests out to the NHS and to our frontline staff, without doubt. But I think there are also grounds for those who are ill, those who have symptoms and don't know whether it is the seasonal flu, whether it is a cold, whether, as we come into the blossom season, whether it is hay fever, whether it is mild allergy. Understanding the symptoms early on of COVID and matching it against all these others, they are identical. There may be some specifics, but not everybody is going to have a fever and a dry cough. Other people are showing other symptoms. Loss of smell, loss of taste was found to be a symptom. But you get loss of smell and loss of taste if you happen to have hay fever. So the mixing and matching of all the symptoms is not enough. And what we've got to try and do is find a way of not having our health workers put at further risk. So although there is going to be little support for those who want to pay their £30 or so and have the immune test done, and I suspect the press will come down on this one way or the other, bear in mind that if you become unwell and you know that you are immune, you can actually go and see a doctor, and that doctor will have that little bit more confidence. It doesn't mean you can just charge out and go into to A&E or go into your practice, but you've got a little bit more information. If you happen to have symptoms of COVID and you are not showing immune signs, then, well, you've got to be wondering what it is. But again, that's more information for the doctors to understand. The test is not foolproof. It is somewhere around the 88% or upwards, which means that 1 in 10 people may have the test be shown to be negative when in fact they are positive for immunity. So again, a very good reason to not stop listening to the abundant information about being safe. And if we are going to continue to be safe, regardless of whether we find out what our immunity status is at the moment, we must remember not to be overly worried. 80% of people who've got this bug seem to have had no knowledge that they got it or have had flu symptoms. Not fun. 15% are those that need oxygen. They are ill. It's a tough bug, this one. It is not like influenza. It is behaving very differently and much more ill-creating. And then there's that 5% who we seem to know who most of those 5% are going to be. They're going to be over 70 with a mean, when I last read about 4 days ago, of 79.5 years of age. So being told you're over 70, or when you're 71 and remarkably fit and healthy, don't be too concerned. No, be concerned. Don't be overly worried, because you can do things to stop the infection to a degree by boosting your own immunity, as we've been talking about. It's 79.5 where the peak seems to be hitting. Try not to be overly concerned if you are being safe, and be very concerned if you're not, is I suppose the end point. Okay.
Rajendra, listen, thank you very much. That's been great. We've got some questions for you. Are you seeing the questions, or would you like me to go through them for you?
I'm afraid I'm looking around, but I'm not seeing where to see them. So you'll have to read them to me, I'm afraid.
I'm happy to be the introducer of the questions. So we've been asked a little bit about liposomal vitamin C. Is that any ideas on any views on liposomal vitamin C?
Yeah. Limited studies, because it's a moderately new concept. The liposomal, anything, vitamin C, glutathione, is a formatted, manufactured process of putting vitamin C into a little fat globule. Fat is much more easily absorbed into cells than water-soluble stuff is. Right. So the evidence suggests that liposomal vitamins and minerals will be absorbed at a faster rate.
Right. Okay.
So I am a big fan. The trouble is, it is more expensive.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to be worried by life, and you're going to be worried about sitting at home not earning, and you're going to be worried about being put on hold, being given a sabbatical without pay, well, you'll get enough from below bowel tolerance regular vitamin C, particularly if it's bound to something else. But liposomal is probably best.
Okay. Also, we've got a question here with regards to chronic fatigue. And that's from Peter. Peter, thanks for asking the question. Again, chronic fatigue, mitochondrial dysfunction, and Peter's mentioning, often he finds that it takes him a bit longer to recover from colds and flu and things. Are there any measures that Peter can take, to help prevent him, boost his immunity and help prevent him, be susceptible to the COVID virus?
Of course. You've asked that question, put in, is there anything that Peter can do? I've got to take that bit out, otherwise I'm giving Peter medical advice. Okay. I'm standing in front of an audience. So the question is, those with chronic fatigue, do they need to do more? Okay, firstly, you, Peter, are knowledgeable in the fact that Dr. Myhill's work and other researchers have suggested that those with chronic fatigue have mitochondrial dysfunction. And if we read some papers, we can see that 95% of people tested who have chronic fatigue and are therefore fatigued without other known illnesses, 95% were shown to have mitochondrial dysfunction. Science, pretty much unrefutable. Conventional medicine does not consider that as accurate yet, because the studies are few and far between. So, firstly, having chronic fatigue, you need to make sure that you've got a clean bill of health from a conventional point of view. Assuming you have done some form of studies to look for mitochondrial dysfunction, and there are many around, although not easily available. If you've got low ATP production, if you've got blocked mitochondria, then you may well have a chronic fatigue because of it. Now, this puts you at a little bit more of a risk. It doesn't shift you into that elder bracket, or that 15% who may have heart disease, uncontrolled lung conditions, or lung damage. And I mean by that being told that asthma is a higher risk. If you are a well-controlled asthma, it is not as high a risk as being an uncontrolled asthmatic. So behave yourself on your inhalers. If you're meant to be taking a medicine, a steroid or such like, take it. This is a very good time to do as you're told with any conventional medicine, however reticent an audience like this one might be towards conventional medicine. So the importance is to increase that which you might be taking to boost your mitochondria if you know you've got mitochondrial dysfunction. If you have chronic fatigue and you've been taking things that have helped, then increase them, but get advice from your prescribing practitioner, which in most cases won't be the GP, but may be a nutritionist or an integrated physician, or a medical herbalist, for example, somebody who's got experience in it. I don't want to hedge the answer to this, right, Peter, because but you can see why I have to be a little bit careful about being too specific. I hope that's a good enough answer.
Rajendra, I'm really grateful for us doing this. I must confess, I'm sure you have, we've both got such a huge list of topics and subjects that I wanted to cover today. And the reality is we haven't really even touched the surface, I don't think. I'm so grateful for everybody showing up. I'm really grateful to you, Rajendra, for sharing your time with us.
It's a pleasure.
And really helping everybody that's attended this webinar. I think, you know, I'm hoping that we can continue this as a series because it's such a huge topic, and that's something you and I can discuss. But I'm hoping that we will be able to offer some ongoing webinars continuing this discussion, because it's a huge topic. And as certainly I've got a massive list of things that I wanted to cover that I would love to be able to just tap into your knowledge base and your wisdom, Rajendra, to help everybody with that. So I'm hoping we can. I think we'll probably we will do some more of these, and we'll let you all know, and I'll see, according to Rajendra's availability, we'll see what we can do. Now, before we go, just for your information, I will be leaving up a slide with Dr. Sharma's details for all of you, so that those will be available if you have any interest in Dr. Sharma's details. Those will be up. I'll be showing those on a slide shortly. And as I mentioned, again, a lot of you have remained on the webinar, which I'm again very grateful for. And as I said, as part of our commitment to all of you and part of our service, because that's what we do, we're here to serve you. And part of my pleasure is, as I said, I've been doing a training with lots of our clients. Now, I've trained many people who have actually not been able to meditate, and I developed the training actually specifically because when I was living in the monastery with my teacher, I noticed that actually people were finding it very challenging to begin to meditate, and many people gave up very quickly. And actually 95%, I can say, of people that were learning the meditation techniques, they gave up. So what I put together is based upon what I've been taught, which is the simplest, easiest, quickest techniques to learn to direct your mind actively, to learn to calm yourself during all activity. And I kid you not, techniques that you can learn in 20 to 30 seconds. This is not complicated, and we're not trying to be clever here. The purpose of this is to provide you with real tools that you can use throughout all activity to maintain calmness, and more importantly, to learn to be able to direct your thinking. So if that's, again, that's completely free. We're going to be doing a 30-day program. Any of you that are interested in signing up for that, I've just sent in the chat box a link through to our contact page. You should see that. And if this training is going to be of interest to you, just click on the link to the contact form, put in your name and details. We'll put you on a mailing list, and there will be live meditations, live breath work, live breath training. It'll be on Facebook, and again, we'll be doing webinars. There's going to be lots of training and lots that you can do. I hope it's super valuable for you, and more importantly, actually, I hope it's life-changing, because that's the point of this training, to help you take your power and be able to use your mind and change your mind so that you can live the life that you want, and of course maintain the health that you want. So that's all from me for today. I'm going to put up some slides now. I'm going to put up, you'll see in one moment, I'm just going to share my screen with you. This is the Think Fit program. You'll see our website link, you'll see my email address, you'll see our phone number. Again, the link, check the link in the chat box. You'll be able to click on that, register, just give us your details, provide your details, and we will get in touch with you if that's something you want. And as I said, it is absolutely free, and you will be able to, during lockdown, my belief is it's an amazing opportunity for you to change your life, to reboot your life, to reevaluate everything so that you can start an even better life than previously. That's what we want for you. So again, take a look at the slide. This will be available on replay, just so you know. So you will be able to see the recording. We will send that out to everybody. So don't worry about that. We've got all of your details. And I'm now going to pop up Rajendra's details for you. Yeah, there we go. Those are Dr. Sharma's details. Please make a note of anything that you want from the slide. those are all of the details, and I will also pop those details into the chat box, so you've got all of those links and information as well. So Rajendra, thank you so much once again. We look forward
to
again, it's really been, I think we were getting some great feedback during the presentation today that, you know, that perhaps this was a little bit of an unusual presentation. And frankly, it really surprised me. I didn't quite realize that, you know, where we were going to go with this, but it seemed to be that, you know, the lifestyle medicine, the lifestyle program being, I think, critical actually to help people really supercharge the immunity and help give them, you know, the way that they're living is ultimately the best defense, or one of the best defenses, you know, given the current circumstances, which, you know, I've got so many things that I wanted to talk about. I was really surprised that that's where we began. And,
well, we'll organize a time, Mark. I'll be very happy, particularly at this time of crisis, to spend some time with you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very grateful. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We're really grateful. We're going to do this again. Please keep an eye on our social media. In terms of, we're going to be doing Facebook Lives. We're going to make this recording available to everybody. And as I said, there will be ongoing support. We do actually have what we call a boost support group for anybody, where we're posting videos and comments for all the things that you can do to help yourself. We'll be posting the link actually for the recording in that boost support group, and I will actually post again. We're going to stay online for a little bit. I'm going to post all the links in the chat box, so you'll all get those. So even though Rajendra, I'm going to let you go. You spent a huge amount of time on a Friday. I'll let you get back to the family. Again, I'm so grateful, and thank you so much for everything.
Be well. Thank you.
Rajendra, thank you so much. And
I'll
see you. Thank you.